Hey everybody, I'm Robert Yerby, and I'm an insurance professional, and admittedly, kind of an insurance nerd. My friends and family tell me that nobody is going to want to listen to a podcast about insurance. So instead, on this show, I'm hoping to share a story or have a conversation with a guest about some relatable experience, and then show you how insurance impacts that story or topic. My hope is you'll enjoy a few laughs with me and maybe learn at least one interesting thing about insurance along the way. Here we go. All right. Hey, everybody. It's podcast time. Thanks for joining us here. And we've got a video version here this week, which probably means I've got a guest. Lori Gubash is joining me from lovely Minnesota. It's not so smoky there anymore, you said.
Correct. Yes, we are having today. This is a picture perfect day. It's 70s and it's up to 77 and it's supposed to be right there, maybe 80. So it's lovely. I'm very happy.
Soak it up. All right.
Yep.
And I know Lori from long-term care insurance. You're a long-term care expert. Is that fair to say? Long-term care insurance.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I've been doing long-term care insurance for about 15 years solely. And it's funny you say expert. I think that, I have a lot to learn, but then sometimes things spew out and I'm like, I guess I do know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forget. I think it was Groundhog Day. Remember that old movie, Bill Murray?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And he's in that little Pennsylvania town, Punxsutawney. Was that it?
Yes.
And at one point late in the movie, um, he's talking about like, well, I don't think I'm God. Maybe I am God. I'm not sure. Maybe God's just been around a really long time and he just knows everything and knows everybody. And I sort of feel that way too. Like I don't always feel like I'm that smart. I just kind of been around and seen and done a lot of things. And I don't know if that makes me an expert. Yeah, maybe. It doesn't really feel quite right, but
Right. But I can say that with 100% confidence that if somebody contacts me about long-term care, I either know the answer or I know exactly where to get it. So that's to me better than a quote unquote expert because I usually have something to back it up.
right on. Well, I have a story that I wanted to share with you.
Yes,
So,
sir.
has to do with baseball and my grandmother. My grandmother passed away, I feel like it's probably 6 or 7 years ago. And this is my mom's mother. She was super important in my life, both as a little kid and then later as an adult when I had my own kids. And one thing that my grandmother and I had in common was we both loved baseball. So she grew up on this farm in rural Michigan, close enough to Detroit where they could get Detroit Tigers games on the radio.
Yeah.
And so she has memories of listening to Tigers, radio broadcasts as a little girl. And, once she got to be older, I think like after she had her kids out of the house and stuff, she kind of got back into baseball and she'd watch it with my grandfather at night. And she knew like the Tigers roster up and down. She would know some of their like AAA guys that might be coming back and forth, shoveling throughout the season. And I'm a huge Cubs fan, and she and I could, talk baseball, even though they were in different leagues and they didn't really play each other, way back then. We always had something to talk about when we got together, and baseball, helped us, bond every time we got back together. Well, I come to find out when my grandmother was like in her late 60s, I found out for the first time she'd never been to a Detroit Tigers baseball game.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And at this point, she lived in like suburban Detroit like her whole life.
Okay.
So I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, Grandma, like we got to go to a game. And she kind of didn't know how to go about it. She was a cute old lady, and you know, buying the tickets and getting there and all that was a lot. I was like, Grandma, I'm going to take care of it. You and I are going to go to a game here. Next chance I get. Well, then the Cubs started playing the Tigers in interleague play.
Yeah.
And so it worked out. I was able to get the two of us tickets to a Cubs game at Comerica Park in Detroit. And I got us tickets that were like 8 to 10 rows behind home plate. So they're good seats.
Yeah.
You know, splurged for my grandma's first game. And so we're on the way to the park that day and we're listening to sports talk radio, and they're just kind of like giving updates on scores or something like that. And earlier that day, somebody had hit a walk-off home run in some other baseball game. And so my grandma asks me, she called me Robbie. She's like, Robbie, what's a walk-off home run? And so I explained to her that's when the home team hits a home run in their last at bat to go ahead and win the game. You just walk off the field. She's like, oh, okay, cool. Well, just so happens, if I have this exactly right, the Tigers were down 3-2 in the bottom of the ninth to the Cubs. And Ryan Rayburn, their outfielder, hit a home run over the left center field wall with a man on, and they won 4-3. And the fireworks go off.
Oh, yeah.
I turned to my grandmother and I was like, yeah, you were asking about a walk-off home run. Like, you just saw it. And so super exciting moment and great time between me and my grandmother. And for a long time, she would tell that story. And, you know, I'd be there listening along with her, and she knew all the details.
Right.
Right. And she told it with a lot of detail. And as she got older, I can remember the moment I noticed she couldn't remember Ryan Rayburn's name. She couldn't remember the player that hit the home run. I remember that was just sort of like you know, she'd been repeating stories, you know, by that point a little bit, and me and my family had noticed that. But when she couldn't remember Ryan Rayburn's name, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. And then it wasn't too long after that. She was telling the story, and she couldn't remember who took her to the baseball game.
Oh.
I was sitting at the table when she was telling that. And I'm right there.
Yeah.
You know, I was right there. That was really tough. And then it was a matter of months after that. My mother had her move to a home. And that was really tough, more for my mom than for me, because my mom lived right there and was taking care of him day to day. My mother really did all the heavy lifting with that, but I heard about it and tried to be supportive of my mom from far away.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, they didn't end up needing long-term care because neither of my grandparents lasted very long in that assisted living home, and it became a full-on nursing home. They progressed super fast, I gotta say. They had the money to pay for all of it, thankfully, and they just didn't hang on very long to where it got super expensive. But it's remarkable how quickly that seemed to go from, you know, moderately, you know, forgetful to needing round the clock care.
Yeah.
And you must see and hear stories like this all the time, probably stories that are much worse than mine.
You know, I do hear about them, and I've seen them, and I can tell you that if it sounds like both your grandfather and grandmother were still alive. So in a case of a couple, they kind of prop each other up, so to speak. They kind of become one. And we see that a lot. And I know that the insurance companies have gotten a little bit more understanding of how that works. And so a lot of times when you see insurance companies going in to say do a evaluation of the person, they separate them because they will make the comment, oh yeah, I can do that. And the spouse isn't going to speak up at that point with them next to them because, that's their spouse and it's going to cause problem. But what ends up happening is they separate them and they're able to really understand how bad the cognitive or the, ADLs are because somebody's not there to help them out, to do the things that they have to do. And um, gosh, it's funny you bring up the story of cognitive like that because last night a very dear close friend of our family passed away just within the last couple weeks. And
sorry.
yeah, he'd been ill for quite a while. My parents are in their 80s, so these were their friends, and we were friends with their kids. And they were, I always said that Jimmy, the son, was a brother from another mother because we literally grew up together. We went and got allergy shots together. We did everything together. And but I hadn't seen them in a couple years. And you go to a wake, right? You go to everybody's there, the brothers, the sisters, the nieces, the nephews, and the stories.
Yep.
And one such story actually walked in, and it was the uncle of Jimmy. And I'd known him my whole life because he went to high school with my uncle, close knit St. Paul families.
Sure.
And so he's only 65, which some people go, oh, that's old. It's not old. His kids are, in their 20s. And about 4 years ago, they just all of a sudden he was cognitively having issues to the point where it's very aggressive. But to see him after seeing him a few years ago, that shock that comes in and you're seeing it more and more. So when you tell the story of your grandma and the progression and how slow it is and you didn't see it, I mean, last night that was like a wow. And my sister was with, and I've shared with you, my sister has early onset Alzheimer's. And so before the uncle got there, his sister was telling us girls, oh yeah, and Tim, he's not here yet. And she's just saying all these things and said, yeah, but just be prepared because he's got dementia. And my sister just sat there, we're all there, we're just talking. And after Candy gets done, and yes, that is her name, Candy, she gets done saying all the things and how horrible and oh my gosh, I hope it never happens to me. My sister just looks at her and goes, gosh, Candy, I was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, 2.5 years ago.
Wow.
Right? You just don't know. You just don't know. My sister is 58. Next, in 3 weeks. She's young.
Yeah.
And we're dealing with this more and more. And it breaks my heart to see how much this is coming out, the frontal lobal dementia, the Alzheimer's, early onset, your grandmother, I'm sure she had progression that others probably saw some things, but there was compensation going on and she could mask it until she couldn't.
Yeah, it was like, I definitely noticed because I lived far away. I mean,
right.
Thousands of miles away. I'd call and talk to her every couple of weeks, and the phone calls would get shorter and shorter.
Yeah.
I could tell. We might have talked for 20 minutes, at the beginning when she was, fully healthy. And then by the end, it was like, I'd call us, be like, oh, Rowdy, so good to hear from you. What's going on? And I'd say something, for 60 seconds. And then she'd be like, okay, well, good to hear from you. Love you. And then she'd be off the phone. Oh. And maybe she would have repeated herself a couple of different times, but like, she didn't seem to have a sense of how long we'd even been talking.
Right. Yep. No, and that's very, very common. And it's just it's heartbreaking. But I know for me and being in the industry I'm in, I see, and hear a lot of different things, and, you know, how families that haven't planned, you're very blessed because your mom stepped up and just took care of it. And I don't know if she had siblings or, you know, what that dynamic was, but there are a lot of families that one event completely tears them apart,
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and you just never believe it's going to happen that way. I mean, even in the case of last evening, um, different family members were saying different things about other family members because how they helped during this whole thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, gosh, you don't know what's going on in their mind, how they're suffering. And I have trouble with a lot of that. It's like, you don't know what, walk in their shoes. It's somebody's father. It's, you know, it was just your brother-in-law or whatever. So
You mean it tears them up because like they're fighting over who should be doing what or
yes,
contributing how much and
yes.
yeah. No,
Oh,
I could see
she
that.
hasn't been here that much, or she hasn't done this that much, you know, and it's like, yeah, she has a 12-year-old kid. I mean, and she's a single mother, you know, so when you look at families that have people that are going through things, and I can tell you honestly, when my own grandmother was um, going through cancer treatments and such, her way of determining who was going to get what was a roll of masking tape and names. So she would say, okay, this is going to this person. And we'd write the name on it and she'd slap it on the back of things.
Okay.
That, you know, and that was back in the 80s. My grandma, I was a first grandchild that got married, and she had multiple myeloma cancer. And my grandpa sold their house and moved into the same apartment building as myself and my husband. And
Okay.
I helped care for her. And so I got a few extra perks because, number one, they lived right upstairs, but I was making breakfast, lunch, and dinner for them as well as working full time,
Yeah.
you know, and she had 6 kids, but I would have never given that up. But then I got my grandma's cookbook collection because she remembered when I was 10, 11, somewhere in there, I had been at her house, and she's a fabulous Lebanese grandma, and she's making all these meals. And I looked at her, you know, innocent, and I said, Grandma, when you die, can I have your cookbooks?
You got to ask for the business. Yep.
Right? Because you just say. And I didn't even remember it until she passed and I got her cookbooks. And
I thought you were gonna say, I got the cookbooks because I got a roll of masking tape, and
well, my aunt probably thought that that's what happened, because I had an aunt who wouldn't talk to me for years because she felt like they should have been divided. She didn't think I deserved to have all of them. Now, I will share with you, this cookbook collection is probably about 13 to 1400 cookbooks.
oh,
And
what?
oh yeah, and she had one of those wooden card catalogs, you know, if you remember card catalogs in the library with the Dewey Decimal System and stuff. She
Yeah.
had a beautiful one of those full of recipe cards. I got it all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
And that's what grandma wanted, you know. I
Hmm.
I was 21 years old at this time. I mean, how do you know what to do? And I hear stories like this all the time because people don't have the conversations about, you know, what do you want it to look like? Who do you want to do this? What do you want to have happen here? And we all know we're going to die, right? Everybody knows that that's going to happen. So people aren't afraid to talk about, you know, heck, that was the big conversation last night was, oh yeah, I want to be cremated like Ken, you know, and
Mhm.
I don't want to have a service. I want that.
Yeah.
That was what we heard from, and nobody's afraid to say it. But the minute you talk about disease and care and that vulnerability, man. People, oh, it's never going to happen to me. I'm just going to go out back and shoot myself, or, and this, I think, is a bigger conversation that families need to start having, because we're lingering longer. The diseases that killed us, Robert, they're not killing us anymore. My mom right now, she goes on Monday to a class for chemo. It's called a chemo class, where she gets to go and learn about the chemotherapy she's being put on for something called amyloidosis, which is a sister disease to multiple myeloma, which is what her mother died of.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's been one of those kind of years where we're just like boom, boom, boom. And the thing is her outlook is very good because they've come so far in the treatments. Now it's chemo, it's going to be icky. She's a little worried about getting sick like grandma did and all those things, but she didn't sit across from a doctor saying, get your affairs in order. You've got,
Right.
maybe 3 years. It was, this, we can get it in remission and it'll be in remission forever. But that doesn't mean that she's going to necessarily be in the shape she is today. She may be living, right? But she may not be able to clean her house like an absolute freak like she does now. She may not be able to cook as much as she does now. Golf, go for long walks, all those things. And we've had the conversations, and I have 2 sisters, and these are conversations that we have quite a bit because of my older sister, right? We had to learn how to have the conversations. And if there's one thing I can say about this whole topic, and yes, I sell insurance, I sell long-term care insurance, but what I do more is I sit with families and I make them understand it's okay to put a plan in place. Let's put a plan in place. And from there, let's determine how it's going to get funded, because not everybody can qualify for long-term care insurance, right? It's underwritten like life insurance, disability insurance, but everybody deserves the right to have the opportunity to sit down and write out a plan. And I can't tell you how many people do it and they feel this sense of relief, and because then we talk about, well, you can't qualify for insurance, but let's look at your asset pool and let's determine with your financial advisor, in what order should you liquidate your assets to make them last the longest. Robert, tell me, have you thought about, what assets you want to have paid out for your care? Heck no.
No.
Right. So if something happened tomorrow, to you and your wife, and you've got kids, and they're going to go, mom and dad are in a horrible place right now. We're in a horrible, heightened anxiety place right now. And now we have to figure out, how are we going to pay for this? Well, guess what? We're going to take the path of least resistance and use what we can get at the quickest. But that's not necessarily always the best course of action. And so to me, this is a conversation of just, what do you want that care to look like if it happens? And if it doesn't, that's great. I mean, your grandma and grandpa, they may have gone somewhere, but it was quick. They didn't have to, go through that long drawn out. But I know people who it is long and drawn out. And I know with my sister, it's going to be long and drawn out. And thank God she listened to me, right? Took her 5 years, but she finally listened and bought long-term care. And that's my own family, right?
Right.
So it's scary. We're living longer.
I love it when I have the opportunity in a conversation to point out why I'm a big proponent of agents. You just said you sell insurance, but you spend a lot of time just meeting with families and counseling them on a lot of things. And that's what agents do.
Yeah.
You don't, websites don't, get together in the family room with people and talk through these tough situations. So I think that's great that you do that. It's a valuable service.
Well, and we as a society need to understand that so many things today, just like doctors specialize in, you wouldn't go to your doctor that's a brain surgeon and say, I broke my ankle, fix it. So why do people go to a financial advisor who their role is finances and getting them in order and say, I want to look at long-term care insurance? I can honestly tell you more and more agents are going to the specialist because it changes so quickly. There's education that has to happen for us. We take lots of education and we learn about the laws in the different states. As you know, I teach on that because it's important to understand that it's not a once and done solution. You have to really look at the solutions and what's best. And so I really believe that, there are phenomenal people out there that specialize in disability, in long-term care, in life. And it's okay if you have 2, 3, 4 different people that are helping you put your plans together. I work in cohorts where I go in with a disability agent and talk with their clients, or I'll go in with a financial advisor or an attorney. And, we'll just have the conversations. And it's so great because it's comprehensive and the family gets to see how everybody is kind of on that same page and they can ask the questions that need to be asked. And I always try to get kids at these because they're the ones that are going to have to do it all. They're the ones that are going to have to administer the plans. So they better understand it, because that's where the most issues come in, is when a kid looks at a plan and goes, I don't understand. And then they think somebody did something wrong, and it has to be explained as much at the time of utilization as it does at the time of purchase. So yeah, I'm glad that you say that, because there are a lot of phenomenal people out there that do such great work that, more and more true advisors need to be looked to partner with, because it's all we do. I mean, all I do is long-term care. I don't dabble in life insurance, or unless it's long-term care life insurance. I don't dabble in disability insurance. I've got a guy, and I don't mind passing things off, because I know that if I do what's right by the consumer, it's all going to come back to me in either accolades or whatever it may be.
Yeah. And I am so impressed with your expertise. I did decide to work with you. You're teaching some of our classes on long-term care insurance. I'll put a shameless plug in there. Yeah, we've got you all over our website now, teaching classes, live webinars. Thank you for spending the time here with me today.
Oh, anytime.
This
I
is a
have a
good
little
message for us to
passion in
get.
my heart. Yeah.
I know that you do. That's a great thing. Keep it up.
Thank
Uh,
you.
if anybody listening today happens to be a licensed producer or adjuster and needs continuing education credit, we got live webinars at bmfce.com. No test required for credit. And if you like the episode, maybe forward the episode to somebody that you care about. They don't have to be a licensed insurance agent. It could be your brother, sister, your son, your nephew, whoever. It really could be anybody, because this subject touches everybody.
It does.
And leave us a rating, subscribe, do all those sorts of things. That really helps the show. And we'll be back with another episode in a couple of weeks. Thanks again, Lori.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.